welcome back to the Red Path. Today I'm joined by two special guests. That's right, I've got Mr. Jack Beeman and Dara here. And Dara's a guest today, he's not a co-host. We're going to have a little chat about the Coventry GT. I'm going to do another video with Dan and Declan about their results and their experience. But we're starting off here because the logistics of getting everyone together was a bit complicated. So first of all, fellas, how we're doing today?
Yeah, not too bad. Very tired. It's been 2 tournaments, 2 weeks. So.
Fair enough. Dara, you doing all right?
Yeah, man. I'm all good. I'm ready to talk world leaders again, as always.
As always. All right. Well, let's go ahead and jump right in here. Jack, I'm going to start with you. Obviously, you've been following your progress recently since you started been getting some good tournament results in, going over to Factorum with the Vanguard Tactics players and hanging out with Maxine. She's playing over there as well. Nice to see a couple of World Eaters players in the tournament. And then obviously we've got the big one here, Coventry, with 4 World Eaters players, which is absolutely brilliant. So tell us a little bit about it, like what it was like going to, such a huge event, on the tail end of, hopefully the tail end of COVID and everything, and how you found it, good time, bad time. Just give us the highlights, man.
So I really loved it. It was very enjoyable for me. It was sort of the second tournament with the Warhammer Tournaments guys, because I obviously went to LGT as well. It was a bit smaller than fair amount smaller than LGT. Going into these sort of bigger events, I was a bit worried that I would run into like the win at all costs kind of players and have some bad experiences. But honestly, I haven't yet really. So it was really fun for me. I had a very good time across 2 days.
Hell yeah! Was it? Do you live in the area, or did you get a hotel and stuff, or?
Yeah, I got a hotel. I live down sort of southeast England,
okay.
So it was supposed to be a 2.5-hour drive, and I decided to go up on Friday night after work around the M25, so it took 4 hours.
Yeah.
But I did drop by the centre Friday night as well to meet Dara and Dan at least.
Yeah. Oh, cool deal.
Yeah, a pint arrived at my table right when I needed it, which was great.
How about you, Darren? How did you find it travelling over there and because this is your literal first tournament since COVID, right?
Yeah, a lot of firsts. So first tournament since 2019, so pre-COVID and all that. First super major I've ever been to. The first 3-day I've ever been to. A whole lot of firsts. Yeah. But yeah, for me it was really awesome. Like, had that thing where it's like I stepped into the tournament hall for the first time in a really long time, and had that moment where I just looked around, I saw the tables, I saw the people, I saw the armies, and it was a big emotional hit for me. I was like, damn, I'm back. I'm back in this scene, and it felt really good. My overall experience was fantastic. I would say, without a doubt, unquestionably the best tournament I've ever been to in terms of organization, in terms of opponents, in terms of fun I've had, even in friends I've made, meeting Jack, meeting Dan and Declan. It was amazing, just hanging out with everyone, talking world leaders, and yeah, just the overall experience was outstanding. I could not praise it enough for the weekend I had. It was really incredible.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Yeah, from reading about what you was all saying about how the days were going and everything, it did genuinely seem like a really good time, and it was great to be able to kind of live vicariously through you all, because that's pretty hype. So all right, let's get into some nuts and bolts here. Jack, give us a couple of or your best moment from because you were in the 5-game GT, so obviously you were having had a different circle of opponents. What was your best moment, your most clutch moment? I don't know, something epic that happened. I don't know. Tell us, what was your favourite part?
So there were quite a few. I obviously won't go into all of them. The Lord of Skulls was my stand-up performer for the weekend.
Okay.
He single-handedly killed 3/4 of 2 armies in 5 games, which was Demon Forge is very broken, by the way, for a 1CP strat. Just anyone who's not aware of that yet. However, the best moment I have to say is my Great Possessed getting out of his transport, advancing 6 with the +1, and then charging Drazar, who has 145 points, and Drazar, and killing him in a round of combat.
Ooh, yes.
And Then the next turn, charging an Archon, breaking his shadow field on the second attack, and killing him too.
Damn, that's some efficiency right there.
For a 65-point model. That was fun.
Hell yeah. Like the Greater Possess is such a good little unit. Like just such a good little missile you throw at someone. I just I don't have the models, but that's cool, man. Killing Jazara, then that's great. The Shadow Field, that's the 2-up invuln that disappears when they fail it, right?
Yeah. It never works. It actually just statistically it's incredibly powerful. I haven't met a Dark Eldar player that hasn't rolled a 1 on like the first 2 rolls. It always breaks immediately. It's like it's so cursed.
He had 2 Archons in his army, and they both broke on the second roll.
Oh.
See what I mean?
It's going to happen, yeah. It's going to happen. I mean, we know all about that. You know, that's why we don't position Khorne next to his own guys. So, all right, Dara, what about you? What was one of your like most amazing moments in your games?
Yeah, I mean, again, like Jack, had a lot of incredible moments. Outside of the games, I would say one of my favorite things that happened was honestly just reconvening with all the guys after the games. Just, seeing Jack like beelining for me across the event, coming over to say hi, running up to check on Dan or Declan and just being like, whoa, what happened? That was really cool. That honestly helped make the event for me in a lot of ways. I kept my confidence up, kept boosting my morale and stuff like that, even when I had bad games. But yeah, I would say in terms of in-game, overall, like as a kind of coverall, macro lore, my Chaos Lords just absolutely cleaning up with Gorefather. He's never done it before. I never roll well with Gorefather, but man, he showed up. He showed up in a huge way. So that's got to be a highlight for me. He took down a Grandmaster in Nemesis Dread Knight armor. Okay. He took down a Telemon Dreadnought, which was so clutch. Yeah. He took down a Lord of Contagion. He cleaned up about 15 to 20 Necron Warriors. I lost count because they kept reanimating and I kept killing them. And a host of cultists, all those other kind of things. And yeah, he was amazing. And aside from that, I think one moment that I think was really amazing for me was in one of my games when I was playing Grey Knights and Custodes. I'd taken Assassinate, and he had this thing where basically all his dreadnoughts could intercept all my attacks on a character, and I knew I had to break the 2 Telemons before I could get to the characters. And in one fell swoop, a drill took out a Telemon, Macro Lord took down the other one, and the rest of my army went from 0 to 15 victory points in one turn because they just walked through all the characters. And I was just like, I went from losing this game quite badly to now I'm going to win. Yeah. So that was incredible. But yeah, they're my highlights.
Hell yeah. Did you run Gorefather, Jack?
I only ran 3 characters: Khorne, a Dark Apostle, and my Great Possessed. My Great Possessed was my guided missile, basically.
And it had the talisman, I take it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he had talisman and violent urgency. So
okay, fair enough. Okay,
yeah, 14 a lot.
There was a bit of a, not necessarily a competition, but there was a tally being kept of all the Gorefather kills there, and I wonder who did win it. It's pretty interesting because.
Oh, I think I won by quite a bit.
Okay. Because
Declan and Dan's Gorefathers just didn't really show up.
It's good when something like that kicks off. It just feels good. It's finally doing what it's supposed to do. But all right, well let's flip it around about. Jack, what about on the other side? There's a moment you've ended your turn and you just realised, I shouldn't have moved that unit there, or I forgot to bring in my reserves. Or any facepalm moments, anything that you wish you could go back and change.
So I had 2 came to mind, and they were both in the same game.
Okay.
It was my second game against Grey Knights, which I lost 55-56. So my turn 4, I used Demon Forge on my Lord of Skulls because I was very trigger happy with Demon Forge across the tournament.
Why not?
Because in my mind, I wanted to make sure that he killed a Razorback in combat because the Razorback was straddling 2 objectives, and I wanted to straddle 2 objectives and hold both of them. So I used Demon Forge in combat to kill a Razorback.
Okay. Probably
overkill.
Yeah.
It meant that I didn't have 2 CP next turn to Tide of Traitors, my cultists, and get my last rod, which was 4 points. That was like, at least I can rationalize using the CP.
Yeah.
The other one was just stupid. I my Raptors had dropped down in his deployment zone to do rods, and then he hadn't killed them in the following turn, so I'd moved them forwards onto his home objective. My Lord of Skulls had bounced off a Nemesis Dread Knight, leaving it on 1 wound. He had then fallen back with it, and I was like, cool, my one lone Raps champion that survived is going to charge your Nemesis Dread Knight to take that last wound.
Okay.
He didn't take the last wound and instead died, obviously. And that lost me 2 points for engage. So that was fun.
Oh man.
I lost by 1 point, and it came down to the last 2 psychic tests of the game for Purifying Ritual for him. He went on to come 10th as well. So.
Oh, that's... I completely feel you. And it's weird, in the GT I went to, and I played Grey Knights, the Tide of Traitors thing, I think I lost by like 4 or 5 points. It was a close game. But yeah, I misplayed my cultist and failed to get my last rod, which would have also could have given me maybe a primary swing. So yeah, there's a lesson for everyone at home. Make sure you keep that 2 CP for the cultist if you need that rod, because it's such a clutch play. And yeah, I feel you, man. Daryl, what about you? What went wrong for you, man?
Nothing. I played perfectly.
Oh, okay. All right. So next question. There's got to be something.
Yeah. So in terms of big gameplay mistakes, to be honest, I feel like I actually only made a couple, which I'm actually really happy with. Not wanting to sound arrogant or boastful or anything, but I played pretty tight across my games. One of the big issues was I built an Alpha Strike list, which was kind of stupid, and then I went second in 7 of my 8 games, which is like a bit cringe. The one game I went first, it was over in turn 1 because my Alpha Strike popped off so hard that it was immediately over.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's not really a kind of like oof moment or like a big mistake. But so one big mistake I made, and I think I spoke to you about it already. So it was game 8, and I had won my 4 games, which is what I wanted to do at that point. And I was in touching distance of getting the 5th and coming home positive, which would have been insane for me.
Right.
And I was playing into Deck Guard, which was a really brutal slog of a game. I think it was Vital Intelligence, the one where it's like search and destroy deployment, you hold the middle or whatever. We'd been trading hard all game long, trying to hold that middle, and I was having a really tough time fighting him because he had a Demon Prince, which was essentially mostly untargetable thanks to the Death Shroud, which were behind a wall bodyguarding him, and then he had the Foul Blightspawn turning off all, fight first near him as well. So it was real problematic to hold down the center, so I started to focus on the kind of peripheral areas. It was also in this game I found out that Deck Guard cultists do not have OBSEC, which is so funny because I marched my cultist onto an objective and I was like, well, you still hold it because you've got more. And he's like, no, I don't have OBSEC. And I was like, this is stupid, but okay. But anyway, So we're getting to the closing part of the game. We have very little left on either side. It's really close, and it's coming down to the final plays. And I've brought in my Termite Drill in his corner, we'll say.
Okay.
And I've managed to make 2 12-inch charges with my Berserkers and my Chaos Lord. And in the following, they weren't actually 12-inch charges, but I rolled double 6s, which was insane. Of course, Makar Lore came in, took the head of the Lord of Contagion, which was sick, but whatever. So there's this big clump of Deck Guard in this quarter on top of an objective. So we're looking at Cultists behind a big L. We've got a Volkite Contemptor. We have some Death Shroud, and we have the Tallyman. Okay. So I send in the Drill into the Contemptor. I send in the Lord into the Death Shroud, and I send in the Berserkers into the Death Shroud and the Tallyman. Okay. Now, the mistake I make here was picking the order in which I fought with them. So what I should have done is I should have fought with the Berserkers and the Lord first and taken out all the infantry and the character and left them where they were because they're positioned in this small L where they can't be seen or shot at. And I should have fought with the Drill last because he would have killed the Contemptor. I would have popped a CP for the 6-inch Consolidate and drifted the Drill in front of the Berserker and Lord in the one gap where they could have been seen and could have been charged.
Right.
However, I didn't do that. I did the reverse of it, which meant the Drill had to go first. It obviously killed the Volkite Contemptor, but then it couldn't do that pile-in because the character and the Death Shroud were still alive. So I really messed up there, because if I kept them alive, that Berserker squad stays alive in the objective. They have obsec, so the cultists don't contest it. And I'm scoring primary. I'm going to score engage, and it's the mission specific where you have to hold the one in the middle and the enemy's deployment zone. So more points for that. It's a huge point swing, and I don't do that. And in response, he marches a squad of Death Shroud up there. They charge in, kill the Lords, and also some entropy cannons come in and clean up the Berserkers. It was a really, really silly play. I was tired. It was the end of the last game, but almost immediately after I fought with the drill, I just put my head in my hands and I said, "Oh no, I've messed it up so bad, because now all of these guys are going to die." And the game was super close. I think it was 9 points in it at the end, and that was more than a 9-point swing between primary and 2 secondaries. And man, I was down bad after that moment.
That, you see, that's I remember you telling me about it, and it's one of those things, and I think it's kind of, I don't know what you fellas think, kind of an issue with our World Eaters, right? Is we have to be strong in every round of the game, because we tend to kick off in rounds 3, 4, and 5, especially if we're bringing in Berserkers from reserves, right? With the drill or Charybdis or what have you. And if you're on your 8th game on your 3rd day of 40k, your thinking power is you just want to sit down and have a drink. You and then you want to have a sleep. But you have to be on your game for every round, and I think that is a bit of an issue, because you do have to be so cerebral, and like that fight order. In hindsight, you fight with the thing that's most vulnerable first, like your Berserkers or your Lord, and depending on what the layout was like. But in the moment, most of us could have done exactly the same thing, on our 8th game and our 3rd day of 3-6, sort of 18 hours of 40k. Yeah, you're gonna make silly mistakes, man. I feel you. I got trigger happy. It was it's the nails.
Normally I'm so good when it gets to the start of the fight phase of okay, what's the order? What needs to happen when? And I just didn't, because in my head I was I just want all of this dead. I just want it gone in this corner, in this pocket. And yeah, sure, I killed it all, but it didn't matter. It was silly, and I paid the cost, and I learned from it. I'm gonna be really kind of clued in for the next time I face up into this.
I'll tell you what happened. You've seen that combat, and in your head it's just hashtag drill gang.
I couldn't resist it, dude. Drill gang was strong in this tournament. My drills put in big work across all my games.
Hell yeah.
It was quite funny, actually. I before every game, not necessarily every game, but I'd be running my opponent through my list, and they'd be like, "Ooh, Leviathans, they sound hella scary."
Yeah.
And in their head, all they can think is 8th edition Iron Hands Leviathans. And they would see the drills, and I would tell them everything they could do, and they would just be like, yeah. And at the end of all of those games, they said, the Leviathans, not so bad. The drills, hella scary.
Yeah. Yep. Drills, they're great. They're such a great unit. All right, well, let's kind of lead on to that. Jack, how do you feel your overall performance was in your games? Do you feel you played to the best? Could you have done a bit more? And more importantly, do you think you had any mistakes or sort of lessons that could have been learned? How do you think you're a better player now because of it?
So, yeah, I think overall I played all right. I think aside from the Grey Knights game, which aside from those 2 mistakes, I think I played really well.
Right.
He was a very good player. It was quite a good list. I luckily got to go first. So my Warp Talons killed his Grandmaster in the first turn, which is nice. And I've learned my lessons off the teleport if you shoot him thing from a couple of tournaments ago.
Right.
I think most of the learning I've done is from that Grey Knights game about being cautious, seeing a turn or 2 ahead. My 3rd game I won quite handily. Game 4 was Orcs, which was I could have won it. My Vindicators decided to
just turned off.
Lose it. Yeah, I couldn't roll above a 2 for number of shots or damage. So where they should have been quite good at killing buggies, they did not kill any buggies.
Right.
And then the last game was a bit of a weird one for me, but I don't think I played particularly badly in any of them. I think I made a couple of key mistakes in the Grey Knights game, which put me on a different path in the tournament, which was a more difficult path, I think, for me. But yeah, because I saw that the Grey Knights player I played had finished 10th, and so I went to look at his subsequent games after me because I'm kind of obsessed like that. Yeah. And he ended up going 4-1, and the list that he lost to was a hilarious penitent engines list, which had like 18 penitent engines in it.
I love that list.
Which, like, the Lord of Skulls would have done work against that, I think.
Yeah. Well, and sisters are just so are kind of well equipped against Grey Knights. I mean, can the penitents do their weird deny thing?
I think all sisters can. Yeah, all sisters units can deny powers if they roll a 6 on a single dice.
Yeah.
So. But I looked at the games that he played after me, and I fancied myself in pretty much all of them. Okay. So it's just like if I hadn't made those two very key mistakes in the Grey Knights game, it could have been a very different tournament for me. I think. Yeah. Definitely 3-2, maybe 4-1.
Okay.
Probably not 5-0.
But still, I mean, that's rough. But you'll know it for the next time. Next time your cultists need to move, or the next time you play Grey Knights, you've got just that little bit of extra ammo now. So
definitely.
All right. What about you, Dara? Like, overall, I mean, you've kind of already touched on it, but like, how do you think you did? And how well could you have done if maybe one of those, if that Death Guard play, if you'd done your order of operations better? What do you think your potential was, and how do you think you did anyway?
Yeah, I think overall I was pretty pleased with how I played. I actually learned a lot about the function of my army throughout the tournament, but primarily in game 1, when I was actually losing by about 30 or 40 points for the first 3 turns. This was into Grey Knights, by the way.
Right.
And then suddenly the ball starts rolling bottom of turn 3 going into turn 4, and I'm kind of like, hang on a minute. Not that my list is resilient, but it sort of picks up this pace in those latter parts of the games, like you were saying earlier. And it really just made me realize how I should be playing my list. And there's so much patience that I actually have to use to make my list effective, specifically my list, I think, which is quite difficult because you want to get stuck in early. I found myself, once I realized that, holding back my bigger Raptor squad to kind of do bits later on in the game. And when I went on to play Custodes later on, they won me the game. I reckon that 8-man Raptor squad probably scored about 15, 20, 25 points by themselves, you know? So I think overall I played pretty tight. I think aside from the one game where I went first and I just absolutely did my opponent dirty by the Alpha Strike, I think my wins were based on capitalizing on my opponent's mistakes, which felt really good because I was seeing them make a play and reacting to it, and by extent scoring a lot of points. So as an example of that, in this first game, I did 2 things that I was really proud of. So again, like Jack, I was facing into the Grandmaster who can teleport once per game. So I set up a situation in my movement phase where he could only teleport to one area that I expected him to want to teleport that was in my lines, because I was like, okay, he's probably going to go here, hoping to score some points, hoping to get engaged, blah, blah, blah. But I need him to teleport. So I moved one of my drills up into this corner where it's him and another Dread Knight. And then I deep struck in my second drill right next to it. So there's this passageway, which is just 2 drills facing down, right? And I'm like, okay, time to pull the bait. So I target him, and he teleports right to where I want him, where I've got Gorefather hiding behind a building. And obviously he's 9 inches away, but it's going to be an 8 charge, right? So I'm like, okay, we'll go for it, because this Dread Knight is a little bit wounded already as well. Right. And I pump everything from my drills into the other Dread Knight in that corner, and they immediately destroy it. And I'm kind of like, okay, I kind of wanted to charge him, but all right, I guess. And then Makralor goes into the Dread Knight, takes it down, which I'm like, okay, that's huge. So that was a massive point swing. This was a turn where basically At the start of the turn, I said I needed everything to go well in order to stay in the game, and everything went more than well. Everything went really well, which kept me in. So then, in his following turn, he moves a Strike Marine squad into a building where I've got 3 Berserkers left, and he's there, and he wants to score. He wants to score the objective there. He wants to score engage as well, and he goes into the Berserkers, and he leaves all but 1. And in retaliation, the champion kills all but 1 Strike Marine. Which is huge, right? So I'm like, okay, this is good. This is really, really good. So in the next turn, Mocker Lore charges into this 1 remaining Strike Marine, activates, kills him. I pop the 6-inch Consolidate strat. He moves into the next table quarter, onto a primary, scores that primary, scores engage. It's a massive point swing. This is turn 5, by the way, and I'm going second, so I'm scoring that primary at the end of the turn, which was huge. Like, I can't tell you how many times the end of game primary like won me a game. It was massive, and like I totally understated it up until now. I didn't think it was a huge deal, but man, it was massive. So that won me that game. I was really pleased because I feel like I capitalized. I made some sort of like good brain plays there, you know, which is a change for me. And apart from that, in the Custodes game that I played, the just mono Custodes one, at the start, I kind of saw him really pushing his force to 1/4 of the board to hold it down. I was kind of like, okay, that's fine with me. I'll go to the other side. Yeah. And I basically just fed my Leviathans towards him, and I was like, all right, I'll body block my Leviathans. They're not going to do any damage in this game, but they'll hold out. They'll tie up the Dreadnoughts for a turn or two, and they did. And basically, I was able to continuously keep him in his quarter while I'm scoring in the other 3 quarters for the whole game. So it just kind of steamrollers after a while, and the 8-man Raptor squad are flying around there. They're killing sisters, they're killing Custodes. It's just a great time. And so I think overall, apart from that big play in the Deckard game where I really, really messed up, I don't think I made too many errors. A lot of my losses, not to blame them on going second, but seeing how my opponent deployed, they would have been so vulnerable to Apoplectic Frenzy, Raptors, and Warp Talons if I went first, especially in my Dark Eldar games, because I played 2 Dark Eldar players. And I would have just put down an awful lot of damage in those games if I'd gone first. Not to blame it on the dice, like that's what happens, and that's what I deserve for building an Alpha Strike list. But yeah, I think that was a big deal for me, and I think that contributed a lot to the losses in those games.
I mean, over 8 games, you should have gone first 4 times. I mean, you know, realistically. But I mean, like I told you, I think I messaged you. It was payback because I went first, you know, in my 5 games or whatever. Yeah, my 5 games of my GT, I went first every time.
Right, yeah. But I mean, even in saying that, I was really, really proud that going second so much, I was still able to bring almost all my losses, apart from the Orc game, I was able to make them close losses, like maybe 10, 20 points at the most, and get some wins out of going second as well, which was really tough for me, you know, and I was just really pleased with that, to be honest.
I mean, that's obviously we've talked about it already, but I'm glad for both of you and for, you know, the other fellas who I've kind of talked to on Discord. Like, everyone came away from almost every game, win or loss, like, man, that was a great game. Had a great opponent. I lost by 5 points or 8 points. But it did see, when I was looking through the results, there were a couple games with, you know, amongst, you know, you 4 World Eaters fellas there, with you know, a decent margin of loss. But the majority of the games, I mean, hell, you know, we all get stomped. It happens.
I got hockeyed by the Orcs.
Yeah. I wasn't going to name any names.
That was my favorite game of the tournament.
Yeah.
Which is really weird, because my opponent was just the coolest dude. And, like, I don't know if he's watching, but special shout out to Chris. Like, man, I rocked up to the table and I was like, you're playing Orcs. And he was like, you're playing World Leaders. That's awesome. And I was like, I love you, dude. And, like, it was so cool. Like, it was so funny. At the end, he had won by such a big margin, and he had a truck on 1 wound that I had tried so long to kill. And he was like, I'm going to charge this truck into your Leviathan Dreadnought and give you that bring it down point. And I was like, mate, I love you.
Did the Leviathan get it?
Yeah, of course
Okay.
he got it.
Okay, just checking. Just
It's a
checking.
siege drill. Well, like that was the kind of game we had where
Yeah.
after like I lost more than half my army in the first turn, it became very clear what was going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
and we just kind of decided we're going to have a laugh. And like he checked up on me after every single game. He was so hyped when I won. Like it meant a lot to me, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool, man.
Orcs players are a certain breed, aren't they? Generally,
For sure, they're all maniacs.
the Orcs game I had was hilarious as well. Yeah, aside from the Vindicators rolling low on shots, but it's fine.
I still haven't played not Codex Orcs yet. I'm worried about having to face them, but you know what? It like you say, it's always a good game. Every time I see an Orc player, it's a good laugh, and that's what you want, right? All right. Well, following that, Jack, again, is there anything you're thinking about changing about your list? Maybe your playstyle? I don't know. But is there anything you want to tweak and try something new with?
So I think at the moment, because I'm very easily convinced, at the moment I'm running the same list for Factorum next month at the end of in 2.5 weeks. At the moment, however, I have also been talking to Mark Whitaker on Discord, and I really want to run a Disco Lord.
I see that, yeah.
I really want to run a Disco Lord and possibly a second Lord of Skulls.
Ooh.
So the plan would be my HQs would be Disco Lord and an Apostle with the +1 to hit warp sight. Is it the +1 to hit and shooting?
I know the one you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. Have the Disco Lord do essentially what my Greater Possessed did, but better and slightly more expensive.
Yeah.
And the Apostle following around the Kloss, one getting Demon Forge, one getting +1 to hit. Although knowing my Apostle, not really getting +1 to hit very often.
You don't need to roll a 2. You just need to roll a 2.
Oh, my first game against Drukari, 14 Dark Lance shots. I went second, having lost the roll off. He rolled a 2. And then also failed to get my power off for 5 up involves, so that's fun.
Nice.
So,
oh, you've gone silent, mate. Can't hear you. But yeah, I seen the I saw Mark's list or his idea, and so 2 Lords of Skulls. Have you got a second Lord of Skulls? You don't.
We've lost Jack's volume.
Yeah, possibly. There you are. Okay, go on, carry on. We got you back now, mate.
I haven't got second Lord of Skulls, not yet, which is why, and I did not enjoy the process of building and painting the first one. So I'm uncertain about getting a second one, and definitely in the next 2 weeks, because next week is incredibly busy for me. So I would have a week to build and paint a Disco Lord, which has a lot of trim on it, and a Lord of Skulls, which has a lot of trim on it. But otherwise, the list would stay relatively similar, like 2 squads of Cultists, 2 squads of Berserkers, 2 Rhinos, probably 1 squad of Raptors, and then a slightly smaller squad of Talons, probably 8 or 9 rather than 10.
Yeah. All right, tell me about that, because I just upped my 8-man Talon squad to a 10-man, but of course we've just got the Death of the False Emperor improvement, so like, what's your thinking there?
So I if I could, would still run 10, just because the amount of times that I've been able to be really greedy with them and multi-charge everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then with their volume of attacks, more often than not, kill most of it.
Yeah.
And if not, then tie stuff up. It builds in some. It's expensive, but it builds in some like redundancy for like Overwatch as well. Like the Grey Knights game, I charged his Grandmaster in turn 1. He Overwatched and killed 3 somehow.
Right.
So I had 7 left, which still just about killed him. I think I had to fight twice, but they did the work. I think just because the maths is that you can take 8 where you took 10 before.
Yeah.
Which is fine. It saves you 48 points, is it?
46 points, yeah.
But like I view it as like they're just more killy now rather than you can save points.
Okay.
and it stretches what you can do with them, I think.
So yours is just because you do need to save the points?
I'm doing it partly to get it to 2,000 on the nose.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's even more
running,
important then, yeah.
Running 9, I think. And then I also wanted to fit... I think I wanted to fit an extra squad of cultists because I did enjoy having 2 squads of cultists to sit on objectives.
Yeah.
And it made it into the late game, so I could tide of traitors for a late game rod if I needed to.
Right.
Because I have run just 10, and they just, as soon as they have out of line of sight shooting,
it's over,
so.
Yeah.
The Disco Lord, obviously with the day slate change, the exploding 5s, I just want to try it. I think it'll be hilarious. And he's obviously a little less mobile, weirdly, than the Greater Possessed, because you can't go through walls and stuff, but way killier.
Yeah.
Way killier though.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm uncertain because, as I say, I'm not sure about painting both those. I'm not very good painters.
I hear you there, man. That's why I bought my Lord of Skulls already painted. I was like, easy, done. Before I ask you the same, Dara, I want to remark, because of the 4 of you playing, obviously you were running the Triple Vindicator Lord of Skulls list, and like your take on it. Dara was running his, the double Leviathan, double Drill. Then Dan was obviously running the Charybdis, which is, I love it, absolutely love it. And Declan was running Hellblades. So, like, that's 4 lists. I mean, obviously there was some similarities there, several drills and stuff, but it was 4 different ways of playing our army, and all of you did well. So I think I'm still kind of happy about the fact that we don't have a list. There's not a World Eaters build. There's not a 5 Dread Knight build. There's not a buggy spam build. We find a list that kind of works for us as a player, and they're obviously Warp Talons are efficient. Cultists are great for our obsec. Berserkers are going to be there. Khorne Lord of Skulls is good, but it's not a must take. So I'm really happy about that there was diversity amongst just the four of you fellas there.
All right, I mean, like we harp on about that so much in our videos, in our chats or whatever, but like it really is amazing that we don't have to have a formula to stick by. Like, everyone can bring something to the table, and it has to be scrutinized. We have to work through it. We have to say, hang on, what are we seeing here? What are we looking at? And just even as you said, the variety across the board of list design and lists that manage to do well despite huge variation between them. It's incredible to see, because like you have to consider we're such an old book, an 8th edition book with very little rules, and limited even more by the fact that we are world leaders, and yet we're still coming up with new ideas. We're still coming up with fun new innovation. People are saying, hey, have you thought of this? And I'm like, you know what? No, I haven't. And my list is literally like, it came about from all of this, of all this chatter of people being like, but have you tried this? And me saying, okay, I'll give it a go. Like, my list was almost a community list by the end of it. It had like elements of you with the cultists in there, Mark with the talons, even Tantron. I put 2 Meltagons in there for the sake of it. I have all these like.
Get a Thunderhammer in there somewhere.
I know, right? No Thunderhammers, but like just piecing it all together and just coming out with this thing where it's like a community built list that still has room to improve, ways I can tweak it. Like it's never static, and that's what I love about the competitive world leader scene, is it's not been static once since 9th edition began. 8th was so stagnant. It was so stagnant for the world leaders. It was like, you run your 3 rhinos, you hope they get across the board, that's it. But 9th has just been change after change after change, and I don't even think it's in response to the meta anymore. I think it's just like someone's like, I got this cool unit, I'm gonna try it, this is what's happening, and I respect it so much. And so for me it's a big deal.
I completely agree. I do like that. We just don't give a fuck, really. It's like this sounds cool. Like, 10 warp talons, 51 attacks. Like, it's just brilliant. It's like, and like Jack just said, like, you can throw that in, if you can get a multi-charge onto 3 units, like, you're damaging any 3 units in the game. You may not kill all 3, you know, obviously, depending on what they are, but there's a lot of stuff that you're just going to pick up. And I kind of prefer, I don't want to say I prefer it, but I enjoy that more than winning the game. If I make, you know, like when I played the Deathwing, and my opponent was like, what just happened? Like, why am I picking up 8 Deathwing Terminators that, you know, 1-up saves and, you know, transhuman and all this stuff? I was like, World Eaters, baby. It's, you know,
Yeah.
It's the fun of the game, but I do like winning as well. But what are you going to change though, mate? Where are you? I know there's one unit at least, that is being put back on the shelf, right?
Oh yeah, I think he's right up there.
There he
He's
is.
never coming down. Yeah, so like I said, I structured my list around a heavy alpha strike, which, you know, had I known I was going to go second 7 times, I wouldn't have. Well, I mean, building to an alpha strike is a big risk in itself.
Hold on.
No matter
Just so you know, you should go second half the time. Just
yeah, theoretically yes,
Yeah.
but I think despite that, if you do build an alpha strike risk or list, there is an inherent risk that you do fall into those games where going second really hurts. And while it did hurt, I was able to turtle up with the Raptors, turtle up with the Warp Talons a lot of the time, get them into line of sight blocking runes, etc., etc. That's just in how you deploy them or whatever.
Yeah.
But the Helldrake was a massive issue for me, as I think almost every single game where I went second, it got shot down. In the games it didn't get shot down, it really didn't do anything. The most it ever did, I think, was take a drone, the fetid bloat drones or whatever.
Yeah.
It took one of them down to a wound, and then I forgot to fire it in combat in my own turn. Obviously didn't kill it. It did explode eventually, which did kill the Helldrake, which was cool. But yeah, he was terrible. He was really, really, really bad.
Yeah.
Like, there was no moment that I was like, hey, the Helldrake's actually doing good. Except for the Necron game, where he managed to pick up 2 murder buckets that were holding an objective. But that game was over immediately, so it didn't even matter that he was
Yeah.
finally doing something. So yeah, he was bad. And like, I kind of put him in on a whim. I was making some last minute edits to my list. I had 150 points. I tried him out twice and he was good because I went first and I was able to block a load with him, which is the principle behind him.
Yeah.
He's great for that. But yeah, he's just not there. And it's sad because I do like him, and you know, I got him painted up and everything for it, and it was a shame, but he's going to go.
Yeah.
Apart from that, the 8-man Raptor squad, while it was excellent in the 1 Custodes game, a lot of the time it was either killed very easily, like they died super fast, or it went into something that just, it didn't really need to be an 8-man. And it's kind of annoying when you've got 2 guys with melta guns, because you've all your chainsword attacks and you have to roll them separately because they don't have chainswords. And on that front, the melta guns really didn't pick up much. They did a couple of wounds here and there, but they just weren't it for me. So as well as that, I also found that in a couple of games, I found it quite difficult to score the final rod. So I always had a unit of Raptors in reserve to score 1 rod. And sometimes just having to budget the CP for Tide of Traders to make sure I could get that final one was difficult, because in a couple of occasions, very similar to Jack, I had these situations where I was like, well, I know I have to Tide, but I could be doing these other things. So I'm stripping back that Raptor squad to 5-man. So we're going to have 2 5-mans in there instead of a 5 and an 8. I'm getting rid of the Helldrake, which frees up actually a decent amount of points in my
That's
list.
like 230 points, ain't it?
Yeah, about that. Yeah. So
What costs about 230 points?
what does indeed? Another Leviathan, which I did think about, but
That's
I said
what
no.
I'm thinking. All right, go on.
Disco Lord's 200.
No, I was tempted. I do have the 3rd one, but yeah, no, he's staying on the shelf for a little while. So I was talking to you a lot, Jamie, after my games. You know, you were telling me what did you find about how the list played, and one of the things I told you was that it was presence. Like, presence on the board was a big deal for me. Actually having an established footprint to be where I wanted to be in. There was occasions where I would have a squad having to go somewhere that I didn't necessarily want them to do. For example, in one of the Custodes games, I had to send a Berserker squad back onto one of my own objectives instead of fighting, which always feels a little bit bad.
Yeah.
So I was kind of thinking to myself, how do I get more presence on the board? And like I have my 6 troop slots filled up already between my 4 squads and my 2 cultists. So I'm going through the book and I'm thinking, you know what, Chosen are kind of looking appealing. And
here we go again.
Right?
Yeah.
Chosen have been in and out of my brain for a long time.
Yeah.
We've run the numbers on them, and I was thinking about them, and I'm kind of like, I don't really hate a Rhino with a Chosen squad inside, because as we all know, Rhinos can be pretty useful at scoring engaged, doggy on objectives. Like another perfect example, one game I had to send my Leviathan to the corner of a board to score an objective. That could have been a Rhino.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about these things, I'm thinking about what unit could that be that I don't really care about, allowing me to leverage my firepower and combat potential elsewhere. So yeah, I'm thinking of Rhino, and I'm like, okay, we'll put some Chosen in, and what are we going to give the Chosen? Well, we're going to give them a Lightning Claw and a Combi Bolter each because it's cheap,
Mm-hmm.
And we're looking at this squad, and we're like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. We got Macrolor's Honor Guard coming in now, and they're in their Rhino and stuff, and I'm pushing points around. And this is literally after game 8. So myself and Kean, my roommate, we've gone out for a few drinks, and we're brainstorming some fun list ideas, and he says, do you know what would be really cool? I say, what? He says, you could take a heavy weapon in a Chosen squad, can't you? And I was like, yeah, you can, yeah. And he's like, how cool would it be? You've got the Rhino door battering down, and you've got these guys coming out blazing with combi bolters, and from the shadows comes the big dude with the Reaper chain cannon. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, my heart, you're speaking my language. Straight away, I'm like, okay, it doesn't matter how good or bad this is, he needs to be in the list. And he's got a chain axe as well because it's cool. And I had a point left over, and I was like, let's do it. So I've got this 6-man Chosen squad, and one of them is the heavy dude. And so amazingly as well, Tantron sent me some bits and pieces from Dark Vengeance. So I actually have the really cool Chosen guy with the cape.
Yeah.
The Lightning Claw, and he's looking pretty swell now, so he's going to be the champion of that squad. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, this is kind of not bad. They dish out a lot of attacks, and essentially what I'm going to be using them for is we're going to have them as like the early presence in the middle of the board, rather than having a Berserker squad or a Raptor squad there that can be more useful elsewhere. So they're going to come in and they're going to duke it out for a turn because they're inevitably going to die very, very quickly. But you're looking at a lot of bolter shots that can hose a Guardsman squad or a Witch squad or something like that. And then you're looking at an extremely potent combat threat.
Destiny False Emperor really it glue
That's
up
where
those
it came
Chosen. In. It did.
I built this squad and added them to my list, and then we get this change. And I'm like, oof, there's not a question about it anymore. This squad, specifically this squad, just got so much value from this change.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to try this squad out. And one amazing thing about the list as well is that I've got this 5+ invulnerable save aura from my Apostle, which the Rhino can also benefit from. And we all know in Thousand Suns lists, 5-up Rhinos are actually quite tasty. Yeah. So I even have enhanced survivability for the Rhino in turn 1, and I have the weird dynamic of the old smoke screen and the new smoke screen.
Yeah.
So I can effectively have 2 smokes going off in different sort of phases.
I like it.
I have a lot of weird, messed up interaction ability, and essentially what it comes down to is it does give me that presence. It gives me that extra squad which can action, it can engage, it can fight, it can clean up squads that I don't want to send a Berserker unit into, but cultists aren't able to touch.
Yeah.
So I really think I'm getting a lot of value from this cheap squad that can just kind of slot into my list, and the list still functions as it previously did. But whereas before it was brought down by the inclusion of the Helldrake, now it's being brought up by this squad that really complements the other roles. So yeah, I'm really pleased, I think, with this edition. And we're going to see how it goes. I've got a tournament in the same weekend as Jack, 2.5 weeks' time, end of November. First Irish tournament.
All 3 of us. We've all got a tournament.
Yeah, we're all
weekend.
playing. It's awesome.
Yeah.
That's going to be a really cool weekend.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try it out in the Shark Tank of Irish competitive play and see what happens.
Jack, what do you think of the Chosen? What do you think of the Chosen idea there?
I've never seen them played, and I've never used them. I in theory, great, but it is still 1 wound, 3-up save, T4, which is, I mean, I only run 2 squads of Berserkers just because I find that for me, it's the interrupt being vulnerable to interrupts. Like because I only really want to feed one squad in a turn anyway. So having two for early trades because they are 90 points, 94 points with the Lightning Claw. They're very good at trading. So I don't know. I wouldn't go down the route of adding more small combat units that are vulnerable to interrupts. If you have, because realistically you have four combat phases really that you're going to be in, and I mean the last one you're probably not going to get interrupted on because no one will have CP. Yeah. But so then you have three that you might get interrupted on, and if you have you've got 4 squads of berserkers and then the squad of chosen, I hesitate at that kind of thing because it's happened to me too many times where I sent like 2 squads in and it's like right, I'm interrupting. Oh cool, that flank's gone now. Awesome.
The way I tend to play it is sorry Jamie, the way I tend to kind of operate around that principle because it's so important to consider that issue. The chosen are essentially there in the first or second turn to trade. They just trade with a unit in the middle and just do that, so I don't have to trade with a berserker unit. And then generally to kind of circumnavigate the problem that you said, I like to have my turns where it's a berserker squad engaging, but also a Leviathan engaging. So the interrupt is a lot less scary because I'm like, well, the Leviathan can probably tank whatever it's fighting unless it's a Telemon Dreadnought, in which case it definitely can't. So yeah, I've kind of managed to hack that a little bit, and I've also managed to kind of get really good at draining my opponent's CP early doors, especially Custodes. Now that I'm like, okay, they want to use all these stratagems and they're this expensive, I'm like, okay, I'm going to bleed you of CP so that after turn 2, I won't be worried about interrupts. And I think bleeding CP from your opponents, like, where you can, is a very powerful tool to avoid the interrupt. So I think while I agree that those are like absolutely big weaknesses for my list, I've learned to play around them to an extent.
Sure.
I'm curious to see if the Chosen can still play around them. I'm not sure. And in my head, that weakness that you said is their biggest weakness for me. So I don't know. We're going to have to see.
I don't mind it. Like, I've tried Chosen a couple of times, and I do like the build. A squad of 5 Chosen with a single Lightning Claw are as combat effective as a squad of 5 Warp Talons. They just aren't as mobile, but they get a bolt gun as well. Like, they only need a single Lightning Claw to be as effective as a Warp Talon because they have an additional attack base. So they're efficient if they get to do what you want them to do. But in my opinion, you don't really care if they don't do what they're supposed to do, because that means your opponent has dedicated anti-tank firepower to your Rhino, give a shit, and then they've dedicated their bolt guns, or what have you, to the Chosen, which hopefully you've positioned to be able to jump into cover, so they're at least forcing... I don't know, you've got to run it, and I want to hear how it does, because I played my Chosen as simply a backfield objective holder. It's slightly better than Marines, basically. But yeah, okay. I that weekend, couple weekends time, yeah, I'm interested to see how we all do. You know, we've all had our GTs now. We've all, had some time to digest and talk amongst ourselves and freshen up our lists or reapproach things strategically. So yeah. All right, fellas. I just got an alert that our chat's about to cut out on us, so that seems like a good point to cut it out, I think. Sure. But Jack, thank you very much for coming in on your Friday evening and hanging out, talking some 40k with us.
Thank you.
And congratulations, you came 51st,
51st at Coventry, yeah.
Yeah, I think. 51st, and there was over 100. Was it like 100?
It was 80. It ended up at like 86, 87.
Really?
At the end of the tournament.
Oh well, after drop, yeah, but
after drops and red cards.
Yeah.
Pushing them out left, right, and centre.
Yeah. And then Dara, you came in like top 75th.
75th, I think, yeah, okay. Which was beyond what I expected. I wanted to just hang around the 100 mark, so I was pretty pleased.
Well, you both did, and the other fellas as well. Everyone did really well, and it was great watching from the sidelines and kind of trying to stay up to date on it. But yeah, thank you both for coming in and having a chat with me. And for everyone watching at home, should be another video coming out shortly where I'll be talking to Dan and Declan and getting their perspective on the very same event. But yeah, Fellas, you have a good evening. Everyone at home, thanks for watching, and stay healthy, stay safe, and kill main bird.